HKUST tonight. On behalf of Greater China Vision Society, I would like to extend our warmest greeting to everyone. Thank you for taking your time off your busy schedule and joining us here today. So tonight we are going to discuss about a long concern topic, that is Hong Kong media and press freedom. So is there freedom of expression in Hong Kong, and how's the political situation now influencing the media, and what will the future of Hong Kong media be like? So tonight we're glad to have 4 distinguished guests here to share their profound knowledge in this field and having inspired discussion with us and bring us insights into this topic. So now may I briefly introduce our guests tonight. So there are our speakers, Professor Chen Joseph Mann, the Emeritus Professor in Journalism Communication in Chinese University of Hong Kong, and Dr. Luqiu Luwei, Assistant Professor in the School of Communication, Hong Kong Baptist University, and Mr. Yeung Kin-Hing, the Chairperson of Hong Kong Journalists Association, and also our moderator, Professor Julia McAllister-Groffs, Associate Professor in Social Science, Education, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. In the following time, we'll have each speaker presenting their findings and opinions on the topic, followed by a panel discussion led by Professor Julian Groffs. And lastly, we'll open the floor for any questions or concerns that you may have on this topic. So now I'll pass our time to our moderator, Professor Groffs. Let's welcome.
Oh, thank you, Tina. You know, as a professor here, I'm often asked, well, Professor of Sociology, what do you think about democracy? What do you think about freedom of press? What do you think about Beijing? And these issues are so complicated. The only thing I can really say is that what I think is important as a university is that we are able to discuss these things openly and freely. And that's exactly what we're doing tonight. And I want to thank China Vision, who's assembled some very distinguished speakers to give us some informed opinions. So I'm going to ask each of the speakers just to talk for maybe about 15, 20 minutes. And then I hope we can open up and have some discussion. So let's go right away to our first speaker, and that's Mr. Yeung. He's going to be talking about the development and change of Hong Kong media since 1997's return of Hong Kong. So, Mr. Yeung, would you like to address the audience first?
Okay, thank you. Good evening, students. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Tina, for organizing this. At the beginning of the talk, I think we just had a casual chat and were pleasantly surprised with the turnout tonight. And to be honest, I think this question of, say, press freedom, I'm afraid people are losing interest, if not confidence, or to put it bluntly, what can we still talk about press freedom? Something that is vanishing. And I'll use the 30 minutes to give you a big picture. About, say, the issue of press freedom in Hong Kong. When we look at the issue, I think we have to put it in the context of Hong Kong's situation under one country, two systems. The China factor in the whole question of, say, press freedom here, which has or is making profound changes in Hong Kong, politically, economically, socially, and of course our media is no exception. Is not immune to all these changes, so we ought to see it from that perspective. And of course, from the outset, Hong Kong is still a free society, as Julian said. We're still able to talk about all these sensitive issues here in campus and in other public occasions in the media. But increasingly we found the increasing restrictions, some tangible, some less tangible, what we call now a popular saying, the red line. The so-called red line is becoming more and more invisible. The red line that President Xi Jinping has highlighted in his speeches made in Hong Kong when he visited here 2 years ago, 2017, to mark the 20th anniversary of Hong Kong. The red line that Hong Kong people should attach more importance to. In narrow sense, it refers to the issue of Hong Kong independence. That Hong Kong should not say touch on those red line issues. And in broader sense, it covers more issues that Chinese government, the ruling Communist Party, deems as their core national interests. Issues that they feel that they could have bearing on their security, national security. So that's the big China factor that I see shaping Hong Kong in various aspects, politically, economically, socially, and impact on the media. The title today is Press Freedom, Present and Future. I'll talk more on present. In doing so, I'll talk about the past. And perhaps I don't have that crystal ball to tell the future, but I'll share my views a little bit. What we see now, where we are, look at the figures. One set of figures. The Reporters Without Borders have done a regular survey, global survey on World Press Freedom Index. And look at China, 2012, they ranked 176. In 2012, they ranked 174, fifth from the bottom. And in 2017, they ranked 176, fourth from the bottom. The 2018 figures will come out next month. I understand that it fall one more rank. That's an exclusive. Hong Kong, when the survey was done in 2002, Hong Kong was ranked 18. In the past 5 years, it's slipped from 54 to 73. 73. So we are moving closer to our motherland in terms of press freedom. Journalists Association, our association has done an annual press freedom index in the past few years. Since I think 5 or 6 years ago, the index, press freedom index, always is below 50 points. The past point. So that's the present situation, and the overall atmosphere and sentiments on journalists. And in the survey we have done among the public is moving in the negative direction. It's slowly in decline. Why is that? First, the China factor. I won't go into go back to well, I will see the 23rd in the past 21 years, 22 years. One watershed is 2003, July 1st rally. For 500,000 people took to the streets. Beijing scared, and then they tightened control over Hong Kong. And in all aspects, that includes the media. That also was partly because of the governance problems. The first executive, T.C.H. Tung, confronted during his term. Media was being made a scapegoat of the government's failure because the media kept taking a critical negative attitude towards the government. So, and that goes, and that coupled with the change of strategy. So the overall trend since 2003 was that Beijing was tightening its control. And then the other milestone development was the 2014, the umbrella revolutions, with the outburst of, say, civil disobedience. And then, of course, within the Chinese government, those close to the political government, the media again was also made scapegoat of the change of the political scene in Hong Kong. About the same time, the emergence of the Hong Kong independence so-called movement or activism or even or sentiments, whichever way you call it, but anyway, the Chinese government, the ruling party, took it quite seriously. As we can see, up till now, I think they are still taking that seriously. So you see all this making an impact on the media, on the room of freedom of expression in the society. Behind what happened in last year, the Foreign Correspondent Club controversy. They invite Andy Chan, convener of the National Party, which advocate the Hong Kong independence, to speak at the luncheon, and that caused a chain of controversies in the society. That also affects the way international community look at Hong Kong on the road, about the room for freedom of expression and media and media society. And now and then on and on, the pressure on the government to enact the law on Article 23, the anti-subversion provision in the basic law that Hong Kong is obliged to enact after the handover. More than 21 years on, is still on the shelves. The increasing intolerance or impatience in Beijing about the delay in legislations. The general feeling among the society and perhaps particularly among the media and political circle is that when Article 23 returns to the legislative program, it will be much more harsher than the version they shelved in 2003. So that China factor has and will continue to cause negative impact on press freedom and freedom of expression in the society. I'll briefly mention a few other factors that has adversely or has gradually weakened what we see as press freedom in the society. In addition to the China factor, the China factor is related to what journalists now most fear about press freedom. That's the question of self-censorship. In particular, when it comes to issues that China feels unacceptable, like Hong Kong independence, the risk of coverage of, say, of stories relating to Hong Kong independence is growing. In particular, if Article 23 is back on the legislative program. Before the handover, a little story. journalists had already worried about the lines between reporting and advocating. Reporting and advocating. For journalists, we report, we make comment, and advocacy, I think, belongs to the politicians, political party. And we might say champion something, values or certain policies, but journalists basically report fairly and objectively, stick to the facts. That's our role and our job. But the way the Chinese government sees it in a different way, they arbitrarily interpret something as advocating. We put almost the same question to a very senior official at an earlier meeting about what our worries are. Our worries are that we think we are just doing regular, normal reporting. We do interviews with people like Andy Chen or Joshua Wong, highly sensitive political figures. We give them space, airtime to talk about their ideas. We see it as normal reporting. That's press freedom, freedom for journalists to do this reporting. But the Chinese government may see it as advocacy. We use our platform to advocate something Chinese deems as unacceptable or a breach of what they see the basic law or the provisions in the law. That's exactly what the FCC has done last year. There's a normal journalist activity, inviting someone to a luncheon to give a talk, ask questions, but there's a lot of political pressure on that, and ultimately FCC and their vice chairman had to pay a price, being denied a work visa in Hong Kong. So there's a lot of bad implications from that case. And in the follow-up of that case, we asked for a meeting with a very senior official. And his response is, to be honest, is not promising. And indeed, he made similar remarks. They're asking us not to advocate. So those remarks have caused kind of a psychological impact on media, on the proprietors, on the editors, on the journalists, and that's a factor that's behind what we see as a worrying trend of self-censorship. Censorship not just exists in the media circle. We've seen the kind of practice or malpractice of self-censorship in the publication circle, in the arts and film industry, in exhibitions, people just acting political smart not to invite someone, or to delete some of the official titles that might be provocative, that might be sensitive. Someone who's a graduate of the National University in Taiwan, and that kind of a title may no longer be found in official publications of the government. So that's to us that's self-censorship, and that's a citywide thing. It exists in the air, affecting a lot of things. I have to go very quickly. Media ownership, and a lot of more and more media now have a business interests in the mainland, and that would worsen self-censorship because the proprietors have other businesses interests in the mainland. May see the media they own liabilities. So better deal with those issues cautiously to avoid trouble. Lastly, I finished that. The government. What the government does? Has the government so strongly on those fundamental values, press freedom, freedom of expression. Whether they come out strongly to defend those values, whether they have done or strengthened the mechanism, the legislations to safeguard press freedom, to give journalists more teeth in, say, doing their work through legislations such as archives and freedom of information. Judging from all these benchmarks, say whether they have done or spoken strongly and act in a concrete way to strengthen, say, the institutions for press freedom, we are not positive. So I'll finish that because it seems that I used more than 15 minutes. Joseph should start first, in fact. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Yeung, for your perspective from the Hong Kong Journalists Association. Now we have an academic perspective from Professor Joseph, Professor Chan, Joseph Matt Chan. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, Julian, for the introduction. And I used the PowerPoint partly because I thought, most of you are not familiar with the names in Hong Kong. I understand that many of you are from mainland China, right? So you may not be know too much about the local affairs. And that's why I used the PowerPoint. Let me tell you a story. In 1995, in the run-up to the handover, there was a world-famous magazine called Fortune magazine, and it had a cover story on Hong Kong. Hong Kong was declared dead on that cover, 1995. And then the handover happened in 1997. And then by the year 2007, that is exactly 10 years after the handover, 1997, right? And it ran another story, Hong Kong was resurrected from its death. And so Hong Kong was given its life back, and the magazine, because the magazine apologized for making it wrong, in 1995. And then now the question for us nowadays, today is, what happened to Hong Kong's press freedom? Hong Kong people have, quite a few so-called core values. If you ask them, what is the most important value? Democracy, freedom, and so on and so forth. Probably, freedom is ranked very high. Maybe at the top of the list. Chris has talked about some of the indicators of press freedom. For instance, the Freedom Index of the Reporters Without Borders, 18th, in 2002, and then 2017, 73. Hong Kong citizens' net satisfaction with press freedom. By net satisfaction, that means the percentage of people who are satisfied with press freedom in Hong Kong minus the proportion of people who are not satisfied. That is what is called the net satisfaction proportion. This is a chronological longitudinal study, by the Robert Chung Hong Kong University Public Opinion program, 68.7 in 1997. It was very high at that time, and then it dwindled to 6.6% in 2016. Now the question, of course, is what happened. Thanks to the priest, he has talked about some of the issues there. Let me put it against a larger picture. It has to do with the reduction of autonomy in Hong Kong. Now Hong Kong survived by the scheme of one country, two systems. That means Hong Kong is allowed to have a high level of autonomy, whereby it can keep its way of life, including press freedom, right? And by most people's accounts, China honor is promised, up maybe until the early 2000s. Now, the major issue has to do with the reduction of autonomy. This reduction of autonomy is formalized in a document, and what is called a white paper on the practice of one country, two systems, It was released by the Beijing authority in 2014. The major lesson that we can learn from it is that whatever autonomy Hong Kong has is what is defined by Beijing authority. This is put down in black and white. That means whatever you own, is what I give you. So and also throughout all these years, there have been interpretations of the basic law by Beijing. That means Beijing has the overruling power in the interpretation of the basic law, which is the foundation of the one country, two systems scheme. And the priest talked about this since 2003, after the huge rally, against the government's legislation of the Security Act. Since then, China has decided to make a turn in its policy towards Hong Kong, and the direction was what is called we will do something. 有所作为. 有所作为. That is the wording used by Beijing. That means a lot. Okay, 有所作为 means a lot. Okay, in the past, okay, we don't want to do anything. Okay, now we want to tighten the situation in Hong Kong. And since then, we know that they have direct involvement in elections and domestic affairs, and also the parametric control of freedom of speech and assembly. This has been happening in Hong Kong, as Chris mentioned earlier. And the cooptation of media owners and elites have also been enhanced. By cooptation, it means the giving away of titles and honors at different levels of the state, like CPPCC, Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, 政协, okay, the National People's Congress, and also the Hong Kong government also has its the package of awards and honors. It is called the SAR Bohemia Awards. Okay, 基金勋章. These are the 荣誉. You can check out the proprietors of the media, like the major TV stakeholders. They are the CPPCC members. For Singdao, Charles Ho also a CPPCC member. They can also, other than giving away titles and honors, they can also create, practice what is called the United Front by befriending and bonding, with the media elites and proprietors. They can invite you to business, have big changes, invite you to have having tours in China, making friends with you, and then sometimes they can make suggestions, they can make requests, and sometimes even harass you, for making a personnel appointment in a certain media. If they find a certain given media, hostile, then they may want to get rid of the chief editor, and they can harass the media list, to change the appointment. And then information control, all governments do this, okay? But the Hong Kong government and the Chinese government, are very good at doing this by playing favoritism, divide and rule astrology. For the Hong Kong media, to survive, mainly, on advertising money. Without advertising money, you have to pay out of your own pocket. Not too many people have such a deep pocket, right? And you run a media because one of the reasons is to make a profit. But the question in Hong Kong is, advertising money, as indicated by a report in Mingbao, the corporations of Chinese interest are not allowed to put their advertising money in media such as Apple Daily and Mingbao itself. Now this is of course intended, to intimidate the media, and also to dry up its source of revenue. So this is a way to marginalize oppositional voice and lends financial support to media outlets coveted by the establishment. Now, in recent years, there is more inquisition and direct control of media outlets by Chinese capital. Now, in the past, it is a hands-off policy for Chinese capital, but in recent years, this is happening, and this happens to TVB, the most influential electronic media in Hong Kong. You know who the deputy director is? The deputy director is Luwei. You know who Luwei is? He was the head of the Shanghai media conglomeration. Okay, Shanghai 传媒集团那个主要领军人物。Okay, well, of course he is a communist. He is a communist. Okay, he is a leading communist member of Shanghai. Okay, I'm not saying it is something wrong with the communist member. Okay, but what I'm saying is, that originally it is a hands-off policy, but now TVB is controlled, or at least partly, by Luwei. Okay, and then what about SMP? It is owned by Ma Yun. Okay, now Ma Yun is a communist member, right? He is a Communist Party member. He made it this public recently, but not any issue with the communist membership by itself. What I'm saying is, it is indirectly, it is owned by a Chinese corporation. The question is, how will it affect the news coverage? And well, over here we should make a distinction between allocative control and operative control. By allocative control, that means the proprietor can control a media by the allocation of resources. That is, if you don't have money for doing this, then you don't do this. If you have the money for doing that, then you will do more of that kind of thing. Okay. Operative control means day-to-day operation control. Most directors in the West do not practice operative control because they don't have the time. But now we don't know what is going to happen to TVB and SCMP. We have to observe that. Also, there have been editorial attacks on dissenting individuals or forces. The phone-in stars, some posters such as Robert Chung, academics such as Benny Tai Yao-ting, okay, and activists such as Zhou Xiaowang, Wang Zifeng, okay, all these people, have been attacked fiercely, by the so-called leftist newspapers in Hong Kong. When we about Dagongbao, they published, tens of editorials against these people, commentaries against these people. Now, the rise of censorship, okay, Chris talks about this. It is the omission, dilution, or distortion of sensitive information for the appeasement of the power centers. In some surveys we conducted, we asked whether they think there is self-censorship. And then in 2001, 13.3% of the journalists think so. And then in 2011, 39% of the journalists, thought so. We did another survey recently, and then we have yet to see the figure. But I bet, the figure should be on the rise. Now, an important incident, in fact, self-censorship is difficult to study, right? Because no one would like to admit that they self-censor. But a very conspicuous, incident, happened during the umbrella movement. With TVB, they captured 7 policemen beating and kicking a protester, in a so-called dark corner, and then, and the voice-over of the TVB news station, they say, they could see that the policemen were beating and kicking the protester, and then, when the boss, woke the next morning and came back to work, and then he cut off the voiceover and accusing the journalists, the frontline journalists, of not being professional because they were not the worms in the mind of the policemen. So even though it showed very clearly that the policemen and are really beating and kicking the protester. Okay, and one thing, another change that happened in the last 2 decades, it has to do with the transformation of the media business environment. And this has to do with the proliferation of digital media, social media, internet media, and what is the implication, for the legacy media. Now, there is a huge growth of digital advertising, but most of this advertising money goes to 2 types of media. One is search engines, such as Google, and social media, such as Facebook in Hong Kong. These 2 obtain about 60% of the total advertising in Asia. I don't have the exact figure for Hong Kong, but there is. I bet the online advertising money also follows the same route, going to the search engine for the legacy media. Now, some of the legacy media, such as Apple Daily, Mingbao, they also go online. But the thing is, the money that you can derive from the online news is not made up, by the it cannot, make up by the laws of your print advertising. So, in the end, they are in a very difficult situation. And up to now, there has been a lot of talks about the media having a second life or even multiple lives, in the online world. But most of them fail because they cannot find a so-called feasible business model. And this is not just a Hong Kong phenomenon. This happens to the rest of the world. And there are some, online news outlets such as HKUST.com, the initiative on Chuanmei, okay, the Hong Kong Citizen News, Zhong Chuanmei, the animated news of Apple Daily, And then at the same time, with the multiplication of media outlets, we also witness the growth of alternative online media. Now, this is important in terms of press freedom. By alternative media, that means they are the media outlets that may contradict, the mainstream ideology. This includes stand news, in media, Passion Times. You don't have to agree with them, but the thing is, they provide, a diversified source of information for people. But at the same time, the mass media, the digital media can be at the service of two masters. One for the dissenters, for the minority, but at the same time it can be harnessed, for the establishment. Now this includes the Hong Kong G-Power, Silent Majority, Speak Out Hong Kong. These are the websites run by the establishment forces. In fact, they have a lot of resources, and they are quite influential. So by the end of the day, what do you have in the field of public opinion? They will have forces countervailing one another. Now, in the past, people tend to think that the digital media are for the underprivileged, for the poor, for the weak. But in fact, it is not so. It can be used to reinforce, the strong position of the establishment. Okay, looking forward. What I can see is that, in fact, the press freedom of Hong Kong is also path dependent. You look at it in the past and you can see what it lies ahead. Now, looking back, what we can see is that, China has been a tightening force. It step up its pressures. This creates an atmosphere inducing even greater self-censorship. And also, I can see that there will be a formalization of control. By formalization means it will be put in a more formal way, even in black and white. This is going to be stipulated in Article 33. I'm not saying that Article 33 should not be enacted, but the thing is, by the way the article is written, by the way the article is interpreted, I can expect that press freedom would be further abridged. Now, at the same time, we have to be honest. We still feel that there is some level of press freedom in Hong Kong. Now, Apple Daily is still running there. Ming Pao is still running there. Okay, even though independence, Hong Kong independence is a sensitive topic. But someone online and then some commentators can still comment on that. Okay. So what we are witnessing, it is not the total suffocation of press freedom yet. Okay. Now we have to admit that thanks to one country, two systems, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and all this provide a scheme or legal protection, for the people of Hong Kong to practice press freedom, at least, partial press freedom. We have to realize that this is the case. So, what I can say is that the press freedom that we're having is partial, and also this partial press freedom may survive if the society is resilient enough. For this, we have to rely on the legal protection of the basic law. We have to rely on the professionalism of some of the journalists in Hong Kong, and also, the Hong Kong people take press freedom to be the core value. Now they have to stand up to it if they really treasure it, or they they become apathetic and losing interest. So they have to face the challenge. And also the media market is still surviving. The media market by itself is there. People can make use of the media market in owning, in controlling the media. But at the same time, given that there is a market there, and the media would have to meet the needs of the audience, and also they have to search for credibility. Now, without credibility, no media can survive. Even though you can control it, but no one reads it, right? That is a problem. That can be a problem, for the media. We can see that the online media is still there. It will continue to multiply, and also the interest of Hong Kong is somewhat diversified. That means there would be different voices because Hong Kong is quite a sophisticated society. So I would say that there is a tug of war between different forces when you come to press freedom in Hong Kong. This is a difficult tug of war. What I can see that it is a battle, but the battle is uphill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker has been a journalist in several countries, some of which have been quite problematic and politically unstable. So I'm very much looking forward to this discussion. Professor Luwei, and she's going to talk a little bit about how the media is influencing people's political participation in Hong Kong. Thank you for joining us tonight, Professor Luwei.
Thank you. So, because Chris and Joseph already give you a broad picture of the situation nowadays in Hong Kong about media, so I'm going to, I don't know I'm going to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about, share some of my personal experiences, especially end of the your point of views. Joseph mentioned that the future of Hong Kong press freedom depends on whether people treasure and core value press freedom as a core value. This is correct because compared with mainland China, consider about that, Hong Kong is still an open society. You still have the free access to information. There's no block on certain website here so far. And there's still have the private ownership of media, which means if you want to have your own media, you're allowed to do that. The problem is what the cost, or whether you can resist all kinds of pressure. So that's all depends. You have the personal choice. If you compare with those societies, authoritarian regime or society under heavy censorship. So Chris mentioned you don't have the crystal ball about the future of the press freedom in Hong Kong. I might share some experiences to see what might happen in the future because I work for Phoenix. Phoenix, it's because of the China factor. So after handover, before handover, there's a Phoenix, which is a joint venture between Star TV and a Chinese entrepreneur, but actually it's part of Chinese foreign propaganda campaign. So the Chinese government do want to have a credible platform which can do foreign propaganda. And so that's why they choose Hong Kong. And why they choose Hong Kong, again, Hong Kong is an open society and everybody can register the company, and it's a perfect hub, a media hub at that time. Even nowadays, I don't know, but it still seems a little bit better than Singapore. But although Phoenix was based in Hong Kong, we have to endure censorship every day. Because every day, the propaganda department in Beijing will send us messages or facts and let us know what kind of topic we're not allowed to mention. Just guess. We have a very clear red line for several topics. Anyone can mention? at that time, 20 years ago, there's no independence issue. Yes? Junfos, yeah. So, yeah. Tiananmen students movement. Tiananmen Square students movement. And one more? Cultural revolution. Sometimes you can discuss it. It depends. Yeah, this is yeah, because in China, the Chinese government, they never set a very clear red line sometimes. For some issues, there's a very clear red line, like Tiananmen Square students' movements, and also Falun Gong. Yeah, but nowadays there's more. Hong Kong independence, Taiwan independence, Tibet, and Xinjiang. So more and more, you can see. But the thing is, you can see the red line, it all depends on the current situation. You never know. So talking about students' movement, I mean, Jew Force, I have worked for Phoenix for 20 years, but I had never covered Victoria Park anniversary. It's just because, yeah, I can imagine maybe in the future, more and more media, they will have less coverage on issues like this when the Chinese government deem it to be harmful to national security or harmful for social control. But nowadays it's still okay because I think the Chinese government understand if you want to, the Hong Kong people consider the media to be a Hong Kong local media, you must cover June 4th. Because Phoenix never considered to be Hong Kong media because we never touch Victoria Park anniversary. So the June 4th anniversary events. So that's why Hong Kong readers, audiences always considered Phoenix as a mainland controlled media because we have a very clear line on certain issues. I got some trouble because I mentioned some people here in Hong Kong. I remember I just, in my program, I just mentioned Martin Lee. That was like 10 years ago, Lei Chumeng. And I was punished and to be, I'll just say, 冷藏, to be put in the refrigerator, which means I'm not allowed to host my program for several months.
Just for mentioning his name.
Yes. So, this is answer your question. What is the differences between advocacy and reporting? So this is the philosophy. I mean, I think this is the philosophy of how to treat the media and the relationship between media and the government. So for Chinese government, media is the propaganda machine, right? It's part of the mouthpiece for the interest of the party. So every people deemed harm to the interest of the party or the party don't like it. If you cover that, which means you're challenging or you are provoke the party power. So there's no, I can imagine in the future, there's no room to negotiate with the government because it will be more and more clear. As you said, maybe it will be like institutionalized by passing Article 23, or maybe have other related regulations on media. So that will be more difficult for media. Because this happened in media, which you can call the establishment, pro-establishment or not. It just depends on whether in the future more and more media will obey this kind of rule of game and to be co-op with the government. So, yeah. I just want to add something as just mentioned how the Chinese government control the media here in Hong Kong. So except like direct control and indirect control, also propaganda nowadays is everywhere. So before, I think Chinese government using a more passive way, but now, have you heard of the word 亮剑, right? Everywhere. show your sword? Yeah. So this is the new strategy, especially after the new government. In 2013. So you can feel the state media became more and more aggressive, and also the government. So not in the future, even nowadays, you can see the digital media, even some media, you think they're independent, but you don't know where the money came from. And the most important thing here in Hong Kong, because here is an open society, if you know very clearly about the ownership of the media, counter-propaganda works. But the problem is sometimes you just don't know the ownership of the media. And they were using the strategy as 小骂大帮忙. They criticize sometimes, but actually they will do the good for the government. So what we do, so it will be very difficult for people, especially during the election. I think for the Chinese government, they are very eager to, by using media to influence people's voting behavior. And I don't know, I would say the last by-election, the result is, I think the CCP is quite like the result, and the media do play some role on that. So, which means in this open society, the level of media literacy are very important, especially for younger generation. So media education, to increase the media literacy, to have the critical thinking, because it's became more and more complicated. You just don't know where the message came from and what is the purpose of the message. And you have been influenced, but you never know. So yeah. Again, I want to share why I left Phoenix. I applied. I decided to apply PhD in 2013. It's just because the red line became more and more red line. At the beginning, just like Tiananmen or Falun Gong, and sometimes some domestic issues, and then more and more Hong Kong issues, like umbrella movement. Phoenix were not allowed to cover any of the pro-democrat camp. Only a few people on the list allowed to be interviewed. And nowadays, I ask my former colleagues, nobody from the democratic camp can be interviewed. No way. So you can see the red line and the space for the journalists are getting smaller and smaller. So that's why I decided to change my career path. But now I'm teaching journalism, which made me a little bit sad, because before people will ask me, a lot of your students from mainland China, what do you teach them here in Hong Kong, and what do they do when they go back to mainland China, because they will realize the concept is complex. You cannot use those principles and professionalism to do your job. So what would they do? So my answer always is, okay, well, we have the responsibility to let them know what is the right thing, right? What is correct, and what is the standard of journalism. But now I just think, okay, even for the Hong Kong local students, you have to sometimes you have to ask the same question, because I remember one day we have a discussion in my class about whether the journalists should be more challenging when they ask questions. I was so surprised that some of them said, no, we should be polite. We should not ask questions and make people, especially those officials, feel offended. I just feel it's like, okay, you should distinguish impolite and critical question, aggressive questions. There are differences, but yeah. So okay. Welcome to questions.
Thank you very much. Well, I was just saying to Tina, we never expected so many of you to come tonight. It's so fantastic. I'm sure we have students from the Chinese mainland, of course, international students from elsewhere. Some of my colleagues are here, including a visiting colleague from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, which is another very complicated part of the world politically as well. So I think we should open up to questions, and don't feel you'll offend anybody by asking the questions, as the professor just said here. Yes, gentlemen here.
So thank you for the impressive discussion. So I have two questions actually I want to ask. So the first one is, as we know, the national conference is now holding in Beijing. So I'm wondering for the Hong Kong journalists, when they are doing their job in mainland China, what's their principle or how they are treated by the mainland governments. The second question is about the recent news. It happened in Polytechnic University of Hong Kong. So we know the reason for that issue is because also the press freedom is very threatened. So the students are very angry, and so they are rude to the government of the university. So because we know that HKUST is also a university that governed by the professor. So supposedly, if you are the governor of the university, how will you properly solve this problem?
Okay, well, let's hear the panel's views.
Usually, the Hong Kong journalists do have compared with their mainland counterparts, a lot of freedom. It all depends on their editors, whether the story will be broadcasted or not. So, like this year, I noticed some of the Hong Kong journalists asked a lot of questions about Xinjiang, the education camp, and they try very hard to reach those Xinjiang officials. Although you know the answer, but this is what you need to do. Usually, all the Hong Kong, not Hong Kong, all the foreign journalists, overseas journalists, non-mainland journalists, when they were in Beijing, they were be under surveillance. And we all know that. Our phone were back, and sometimes they will follow us. So we needed to be very careful when we contact our contacts, our interviewees, because in some cases you just don't want to make any trouble because of your reporting for those normal people. So some of the interviewees in mainland China are already prepared for the cost, but some of them are not, especially for those average person. They sometimes are the victims of different events, but yeah, so these are the differences.
Yeah, can I just add to the first question? Now, I think it is the major issue in covering the two conferences that there's a lack of access to information that you want. There's abundance, of official information. You have so many press conferences, all these, the top officials, to talk to you. But the thing is, you would want to interview someone of your like, then, you may have difficulty accessing anyone. And then there's also a lack of access for selected media in Hong Kong. Some media are denied, a permit to cover the conferences in Beijing. So this is the major issue over there. And for the people who can attend the conferences, they have to read the way around, and then to talk to the right people, and then to emphasize, things that you think are important. Otherwise, you have to follow the official line.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. You mentioned the press conference of the MPC, because nowadays the government just want to increase the transparency. So all the important press conference will be broadcast lively, right? So then the Q&A session will be very important because the government don't want to make any mistake on that. So all the questions were pre-screened and all the reporters were appointed before. So it's like a show, I would say. So some journalists, as I know, some journalists refuse to join this game and they were denied access to that, they don't have the chance next time.
I'll try to tackle the second question about the poly-U. And strictly speaking, of course, it's not a press freedom issue, but I would say it's a freedom of expression issue. The manner, whether it's the students are polite or rude, and the penalty is one thing, but the crux of the matter, I think the source of trouble is really the democracy war. The freedom for students to express their views on the wall. And then, of course, the sparks are the posters that carry Hong Kong independent messages. I think that's the question that I think underlies now the problem or the danger that we are facing now. For a long period of time, we can differentiate between speech and acts. We can talk about anything we want, including Hong Kong independence, or even in academic debates or in articles, we talk about highly sensitive issues, ethnic issues, racial issues. Those belong to freedom of expressions. So we will put something on the democracy wall is just an expression of views. Like we invite someone to talk about his ideas, Hong Kong independence, it falls within the parameters of freedom of expressions. But China doesn't see it that way. They blur, well, sometimes I would say intentionally, the lines between speech and acts. Speech and acts, 言论 and 行动, 行为, 行为啊, 行为, to us, it's, we just write anything we want, but the articles we write, we put it on our website, on the newspapers, could be say, interpreted as acts, as 行为, activities. And that might fall into the traps of the law in, say, Article 23 later. And that's also the government has already done so when dealing with the Hong Kong National Party's registration. They invoked the society ordinance to outlaw this organization, citing a lot of speeches that Andy Chan made in interviews with the media, on public events like assemblies, speeches. Strictly speaking, this party has done no acts of, say, threats to national security. For instance, they didn't mobilize people, they didn't buy, say, raise money to buy weapons or all these things to, say, subvert the country. The weapons that they use are those speeches. But now we increasingly see that those have been blurred. And that's why the university, they have to stop that, because those speeches run the risk of being already been seen as acts by the people in Beijing and perhaps also by the people in the government here. So that's the I would say the crux of the matter. But I haven't talked about the future because I see that those fundamental differences are increasingly making a presence and affecting our society now in a lot of these issues. The lines between speech and acts, and also the way the Chinese government thinks about the media. I think increasingly they don't have those ideas about independent media. Yeah, to them, media is a tool. There's no such thing as independent media. And that fundamental differences, unfortunately, has become even wider, I would say, 21, 22 years after the handover. That was very different. That was very different from the way we thought about it before the handover. A lot of people in Hong Kong and perhaps in the international community thought that, without now wishful thinking, that when China opened up wider, when they liberalized the economy, it will be followed by liberalization in many other aspects, politics, society, media. But now it seems that that's not the case. That's not the case. And fundamentally, the communist mindset of control that cannot really coexist with the independent media. So media has to become under certain control. They know that the Hong Kong is a free society, market economy. They can only influence. They cannot control, directly control media. They control by buying stakes, SCMP, by a businessman. Because they know that if they bought it and turn it into China Daily, nobody reads SCMP. They don't need another China Daily. So someone bought it and make it closer to China, the China Daily. They cannot buy it, buy all of them. They cannot control all of them. So they run their own. They spend billions of dollars to say buy and also create their set up their own media under different names, under different faces, but all money comes. We know where all the money comes from. Sorry, that sounds a much far-fetched answer to your question. But it is a worrying thing because we think opposite. We think universities is a place for discussion without any limits. But now the limits are increasing, and universities management unfortunately don't stand firmly on those issues.
I have a question about the education. I have a question about politics education on our generation. Not to say my peers in mainland. Definitely, I believe a lot of peers in my age, they are educated by their parents, like my parents told me. When you went to Hong Kong, don't say anything about politics. Don't write anything about politics. Don't leave any trace on maybe internet. Anyway,
These are your parents.
Yeah, that's what my parents say. And there's a chance
You're from the Chinese language.
Yeah, I'm from mainland. And there's a chance I talk to a group of locals. We are actually discussing about volunteering work. But randomly I brought it up. I said actually my parents will limit my speech of freedom on politics. And there's a local girl told me actually her parents told her not to do so as well. And a lot of locals response in that group that they are taught not to speak freely. And I believe this is very common in this university, because actually this kind of event is really rare in this university, I would say. And our democracy war, most of the time is about the complaint about the price of the restaurant. Yeah, that's all. But I believe whatever the situation of the politics will change in the future, but the influence on our on this generation, on my generation, will definitely influence society a lot. So I would like to ask, like, what's your opinion on the education we receive about the politics, about the society, on our generation will influence the direction of the society development? Thank you.
Let me say something first. So yeah, perhaps the price of the restaurant also a democratic process. You can explain that, which is very good, because in some society you don't have this chance to do this, right? So this is a practice which is good, and make you understand what is democracy. And so, yeah. I also met a lot of students because their parents will warn them. So the differences between you and the local students, I think there is some differences because the consequences will be different. So for the local students here, they only worry about their future, right? Their future might be influenced if they involved too much in politics, and maybe have some impact on their the grade GPA, or maybe their apply for the future school, graduate school. But for you, your parents maybe were worried you will be intimidated by the power. It might be happen because think about that. Recently, some Twitter users, they based in mainland China, they only use Twitter. They even didn't post for, I think, like 1 year, but they were asked by the police, they were reached by the police and asked them to delete their Twitter account. So you can see the social control in mainland is totally different, and your parents' worry, I can justify because, yeah, this is the reality. So, be careful online, especially on WeChat, and yeah. And you can use like other social media platform to communicate with your local students and involve in anything. So and also, I would say if you can talk more about politics with your parents, it depends. If your parents are not that, if you know what kind of your parents are, so you either be silent when you go back home, but you just be yourself when you hear, so it's okay. Yeah, because this is also the suggestion we usually give to our students from mainland China. Because this is a good opportunity for you to reach the outside world and to reach more information. You can compare and make your own judgment, because the right judgment based on enough information.
Professor Chen.
Yeah, may I add to that? You know, it is really sad to see that, you know, social control, political control is more or less, you know, totalistic in mainland China. And the saddest thing is that, you know, that kind of control is extended overseas nowadays, okay, more and more so. And then what about the Hong Kong young people, you know? They are beginning to experience the same kind of social control. One thing is, you know, like during the, I'm not saying that umbrella movement is necessarily right, okay? I'm saying that, you know, some of these young protesters, activists, okay? Now, once they are found to be, you know, subversive, then they are barred from entering mainland China. That means, you know, that, and it is made known to the rest of the society. Now, this means that, you know, that student would not be able to access the China market, or he would not be able to, you know, to develop his career this says a lot of things about the parents in Hong Kong. And that's why, in the past, they already advised the sons and daughters not to engage in politics, okay? And just our traditional wisdom, okay? But nowadays, they know that, your doors will be shut in many ways if you get into politics, which, can be anti-communist, that is a bad thing. Now, what can be done about that? Now, looking back into history, now things of this kind, happened in mainland China. In the era before 1949. Now maybe it is even more severe. At the time, the people are very timid. Okay, but the thing is that at that time, the communists, get into politics very actively. They read the sensitive books. Okay. They have 读书族, okay, then they get into all these, radical writings by Marx and Lenin, The question is, why that happens? Now, can, that kind of social control be totalistic? Yeah, there are signs indicating that it is moving in direction with the social credit system, With it is in full practice, what is going to happen to independent thinking, Wu Xingdao, there's a scholar in Beijing, he Now he during just recently he declared himself, I won't entertain any journalists from now on, because there's no room for independent thinking in China, Now, it is a way of surviving, but at the same time, it is already excommunicating yourself, from the mainstream society in China, Now, people of this kind, they live on, and then students of different kinds would survive somehow. Now, the question is, why is that the case? It has to do with the availability of a better knowledge base. It has to do with your sense of curiosity, whether your sense of curiosity is strong enough, and also it depends on some serendipity. Sometimes chance factors may get into your life. You don't know how or why. And otherwise we cannot explain. Why history is taking that kind of that course of development. Total control, worse control, and yet different thinkers, different activists would emerge. I'm not saying which kind is best, okay, but it happens. You can control, for a long time.
Just very brief. I don't pretend to know the risks. For mainland students here getting involved in politics, but it's. I think to be frank, I think the risk for people going politics in Hong Kong is getting higher. Is quite clear. How long that abnormal situation will last, we don't know. Some differences run deep. Between the two places, some of which I mentioned earlier. Some are short-term, relatively. Xi Jinping's leadership. Anyway, we don't know whether he will run the country for how long. But that makes a difference. We've seen some of the things that have moved backwards cannot be unrelated to Xi Jinping. So first, I think understand clearly the risks. Protect yourself. Understand what you may lose, but don't forget what you may get. what you may gain from getting involved, even being on the front line of politics. You fight for what you believe in. That's something that you may get satisfaction and get a sense of reward from it. Hong Kong, I think, is still a good place for people like you to come here to learn, to gain knowledge. That's, of course, is important. But to me, it's also important that from here you get what Hong Kong means. What Hong Kong means. We always say when there's a choice between freedom and democracy, people will choose freedom. Hong Kong people will choose freedom. We cherish the right to choose the diversity of the society. That's what freedom is about, because we can free to choose. And then there's a range of so many things that we can so diverse. There's a lot of things that we can choose and we can believe in. Those are to a lot of people here are fundamental, and what Hong Kong is about and what Hong Kong is about. And the danger, of course, the risk, of course, is that we are losing choices and diversity. Still diverse, but the range of choices, the political spectrum, the spectrum of views is getting more narrowed, and ultimately, that's not the Hong Kong that we want or that we know. And understand why that's important, not just in Hong Kong but in other places, perhaps even more so in mainland China.
This gentleman here, and then this lady here. First,
Thank you. I'm also from mainland China, and I agree that the freedom of press is very important. But I think the freedom of press should be based on the principle of objectiveness and fairness. But nowadays in Hong Kong, I think the mass media always have strong political stance. There are two camps. The first one is pan-democracy camp, like Apple Daily, and the second camp is pro-establishment camp, like 大公报, 文汇报, and they are just fighting with each other, and I think they are losing the fairness and objectiveness. For example, 2 years ago, there was an oath-taking session in Legislative Council, and one candidate named Yeung Hui-zhen, she pronounced China in some insulting pronunciation. And after this issue, media like 大公报 criticized their behavior, but the Apple Daily just says that you are so sensitive. It's just a normal thing. I think they are just losing their objectiveness and fairness, and so I want to ask how do you comment this phenomenon in Hong Kong?
Yes, thank you for this question. Actually, is there too much freedom of speech sometimes that it became almost offensive to you, right? Yes. How would the
So I think for audiences, first of all, you should have the capability to distinguish opinion and the facts, right? So in Hong Kong, I think the thing is you still have different choices. So if you don't only have one camp, then you only have got one point of view. But nowadays we still have two camps, and also have some media. You can think them all so-called in the middle. So because of the credibility of the Hong Kong media nowadays relatively low, so which make you you needed to take some efforts to find the facts by using different media sources, not depend only on one news outlets, and also when you say the two newspapers, they have a very strong political views, this is their editorial opinion, right? So we will consider them as even in US we have a liberal or a Republican. But for example, like Wall Street Journal, if you look at that, read their news reporting, it's relatively okay. But if you read their opinion pieces or editorial pieces, as I would include a very strong opinion and a very pro-Republican. So for me, I never worried about that. So because in a free society, you still get the access to different kind of information. The only worried me is by the control of the media, which means you only have you relatively have less choice on one side. So because you only have one choice on one side, it might provide you very low quality or low quality information, which would have impact on your judgment. So that's why we're talking about free press are very important. It's just because which allow different kind of media, high quality, low quality. Low quality, you can call them the tabloids. You have to distinguish what is the broadsheet, what is the tabloids, and then you know where to get the information. So this is also the I think it's the basic skill for citizen nowadays. Especially when we're talking about internet, a lot of information from internet, that's also the same problem because information from internet will be more diverse and more provocative, or sometimes, yeah.
As an advocate of free speech, I do find some of the tabloid newspapers in Hong Kong pretty shocking. And sometimes I do wish there was a bit of a regulatory watchdog on some of these stories, which can often be sometimes quite racist or quite sexist. I think this relates to this gentleman's question. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, maybe there's a dictum saying that facts are sacred, comments are free. That is to say, in general, that's the way we deal with information and comments. In this case, Da Gong Bao and Apple Daily, they hold different points of view that can be tolerated or even desired. But the thing is, should they falsify news? Should they make report fake news? That is a different story. Now the press freedoms, as I understand it, would not allow, or would not have a very low tolerance of fake news. Now, if fake news happen, how should we control it? It is subject to legal regulation and also ethical, regulation. By legal regulation, you have to resort to laws to accuse someone of false reporting, or also, defaming, so you do have some laws governing that. And this idea of having, a free press, allowing all kind of things, to crop up and up to individuals to select and also get informed, so that you can make the best judgment. This rests on the assumption that people do have a critical mind; they can make their own judgment. But at the same time, as you mentioned, what about sexism? Who is going now? This media have to be subject themselves to criticism from the audience, and sometimes by the market, and the people of higher education probably would not like to, read the sexist, magazines, or if they, and especially if they're against it, okay, and then they can criticize it, for doing so. Now, the question is, if we want to police the media in some certain ways, the question is, who is going to set the standard? Who is, and that's why in a free press they would allow, the system to have, media of different kind of standards, orientations, and then it will up to people to choose, But if you think that, all the people should be manufactured, by one standard, then of course you should have total control over the media. And in that case, you are hoping that you can breed a new humankind.
Mr. Young, do you have any?
Let's have more questions.
Yeah, more questions. Yes, I think this lady here had her hand up. Yeah, and then the gentleman right
Do you
at the
have
back.
a mic? Thank you. Thank you. So my question is actually related to the last two questions that we mentioned media literacy, right? So for people come here tonight, we care about press freedom, so we came here to listen the speakings. But for most people, ordinary people out there who doesn't care about this a lot, so as educators, like the professors, how do you enhance the media literacy of ordinary people to in this information diversity age? Thank you.
Well, let's hear from a professor. Professor Chan.
Well, I think there is no better place than Hong Kong when you come to media literacy. But in this case, media literacy can be self-taught, because you have access to all kinds of information, at least up to now, and you can, to the foreign, domestic, Chinese, mainland China, you have full access to all this information, and so it can be an adventure for you, and then you can make the best judgment, after going through all this kind of media, and also you can have real experience of whether a free press system is good for society or not. Because in Hong Kong, some people may not like the chaos, the diversity, and then in fact it is really up to individuals to think over, where. What is the source of creativity for a society? Does the society need creativity? Do they need diversified voices? No. I think it will trace back to the basic questions about the kind of desirable societies that you want. I do not assume that everyone would like a pluralistic system. No, not everyone. Some people are so used to one standard that they abhor. There's abundance of information, distracting information. Just tell me the right answer. I don't really want to know. So many questions.
So you create the space for one voice. You create a space for voice control.
I would, I personally would prefer, because I'm very curious about the world. I'm looking for the most, the best way for dealing with our problems, my personal problems. I want to get fully informed. If I'm sick, getting an incurable disease, I want to know everything. Okay. And just like I want to know everything about the way that I live in order to have a better future. So with that kind of assumption, I would like to know more, and instead of satisfying myself, with what is given, and then how to go about doing that, you have to venture out to know more, and yeah.
My personal experience, 20 years ago when I moved to Hong Kong, I prefer those magazines and books called 真名 or yeah, all those books which are 自由行, the tourists, the mainland tourists crazy about, or about those secret conspiracy stories about Chinese leaders. Yeah, the Causeway Bay bookstore book like Xi Jinping's Lovers. Yeah, those books I was so crazy about that. It's why, because I came from an authoritarian regime, and all the information was censored. We have no idea about leadership's life, especially personal life, and we are fascinated about those gongdou or the fighting, the Gaoten fighting. So. But after a few years, and I realized how to differentiate the information. The most important thing is you must know the sources, right? So also the books, there's no sources. They're funny reading, amusing. But the thing is, you should not treat it like a very serious reading. But even nowadays, some of my friends at my age, well educated, they still go for those books, and that's why at the airports, those kind of books are always at the top 10 or top 3 bestseller, right? So this is still related to media literacy, but the thing is the environment and whether you are trying to improve your capability of distinguishing information, which is very important. But now here you're in Hong Kong, so I think that for me, it's just because I moved to Hong Kong where I can access to different kind of information, and then I can know how to distinguish the information. So yeah, take time, don't worry, because you're already here, enjoy the open environment.
But my question is about like
how professor can do for.
Can do not for me.
Okay, yeah, for professor.
No, it's for people out there who don't care about
education. So my personal, I use Weibo. I wrote like more than 10 articles about media literacy, so it can reach to my followers, which are 7 million. So I think this is one way to influence people, although I'm not sure how many people will read it. But yeah, this is one way. So for you, you can also do things to influence people who are not care about like press freedom or care about the media literacy. Because when your parents retweet those fake information on WeChat, especially those health information, it is your responsibility to tell them that's wrong, right? But usually we just ignore it and think, okay, it's not my business and let it be because those people are stupid. But maybe you should also take that responsibility from doing things starting from those minor things.
Thank you.
Question back, gentleman right at the back there, yes.
Firstly, thank you for your sharing, and I always have such imagination. So what if the democratic pioneers during the era of Republic of China, such as Sun Yat-sen, like Chen Duxiu, sorry that I cannot speak Cantonese, and those people we admire in the Great China region lived in today's China, what would be their stance? Would they like side with the press freedom or side with the Beijing government? Thank you.
No, I just want to say history is not because you're already here. Think about now. Think about the present. Why you still care about? I don't know. Yeah, maybe you should care about the history. But the sense, yeah, it's not happen. We already make the choice, and the choice already been made, and then now we are taking the consequences and then deal with it, right? It's the choice of nowadays.
Well, the question is about what would happen to Chengdu and Shi Yizhen, okay, and also maybe you can add another fellow there, Luqiu, okay. Well, in fact, every one of them, did not have a easy time, during their lifetime. We're talking about Mingguo. Okay, what will happen to them if they keep on playing the role of dissenters? Okay, now they were dissenters at the time. Shi Yizhen, Chengdu Luqiu, okay, all dissenters. They had a very difficult fate. Now, if they continue to play dissenters, what will happen? That is the easy answer, right? And even Mao himself said, if Luqiu did not pass away, before 1949, he would have been imprisoned during his reign.
Okay, this gentleman in the blue, and then.
Okay, so I'll speak without mic. So thank you, professors and Mr. Yeung, for the nice talk. I have two questions. So the first one is about the China factor mentioned by Mr. Yeung. So and it's about the central government in Beijing being friends with the officials in Hong Kong, like Dong Jinhua or becoming and also like the legislator in Hong Kong, Luwei becoming the So I just got these quotes hours ago from the TVB app, saying like 全國政協委員李慧瓊說，絕大多數香港市民的眼睛是雪亮的，對港獨分子都是心痛惡絕。港獨的惡劣行徑，於法不容，於理不通，於情不合，是不得人心，也絕不可能成事。I'm not judging whether Hong Kong independence is right, and I actually do not support Hong Kong independence. And but what I'm trying to point out is that the way when they are at a different position, the way they talk is a lot more like the mainland officials, like the one that I just quoted. So my first question would be: do you think this kind of saying from the Hong Kong people would affect the general public in Hong Kong? Have influence to the opinions of the general public in Hong Kong. And the second question is, as you mentioned before, that Hong Kong is quite a sophisticated society. So last summer I went to Peking University summer school and took a course called Media and International Relations. And we're doing a presentation, and there was one group mentioning the mass protest back in 2003 when the government was trying to establish the Article 23, and they were doubting whether there was 500,000 people going out to the street. They were doubting that the local news agencies were exaggerating the number. And then the professor in PKU said like 我的博士是在香港做的，那时真的是有50万的人，香港是一个很复杂的城市。So what I think.
Would you just like to translate?
So he was trying to say that I did my PhD in Hong Kong, so that professor at Peking University, and that time I was in Hong Kong and there was really 500,000 people. So Hong Kong is a very sophisticated society. So that 100% echoes with what Mr. Yeung said. So my question would be, what do you think in this sophisticated society? What are the interests or the forces that can help us as the people in Hong Kong to maintain their core values, or the institutions, or the two systems in the one country, two system mechanism? Thank you so much.
First, actually, the way you spoke is quite Hong Kong. You have Cantonese, Putonghua, and English. That's Hong Kong. That's Hong Kong. We have two Chinese, Cantonese and Putonghua. And that's what country two systems is about. The first question, I think that's one of the major problems. And to be honest, I think Luwei King, I think her audience was really the Chinese government. She's not talking to us. She's talking to the Chinese government. So she just used the script being written for the audience in China, 1.4 billion people. And that's the problem. She's a high-placed politician here, and she doesn't. She's not being seen as by a lot of people here as speaking for the Hong Kong people. Of course, you're right. I don't think a lot of people here support Hong Kong independence. But a lot of people here don't care about people talking about Hong Kong independence because that's freedom of speech. As long as he or she doesn't break the law, he doesn't raise a fleet of army, say sending bombs to the PLA here, etc., etc. That's the line of the law. That's the line of the law. But the line of freedom of expression is much liberal, and that's something that we should keep. Sorry, I lost the second question.
So the second question is, in this sophisticated society, what do you think are the interests or the forces behind all these that can help us preserve our core values or the institutions and the two systems, especially the two systems under that one country, two systems mechanism?
First, I think now we really, the society itself, also the Chinese government itself, really have to, we affirm what really Hong Kong is about, the kind of fundamental values, back to the original intention of why we want one country, two systems, why we want to keep Hong Kong. It's all those values, it's all those room of freedom of expression, choices, diversity. Are we losing that, and what went wrong? I think we really have to say we confirm something, and then we hold it tight, and we make sure that it is not going to be lost intentionally or unintentionally. So we back to the question raised by the student out there, what we should do to those people who don't get that. We ought to speak. We ought to keep speaking it out. We ought to keep speaking it out, even though, at least from my perspective, there's a growing feeling of futility, helplessness in the society about Hong Kong, about those fundamental things, that we are going to lose it, but we should not let it happen. Particularly when we know that it's in danger. Just keep saying that, telling people why that's important, why freedom of the press is important, why freedom of speech is important, why we should defend the right of people to say anything they want, as long as they don't breach, go beyond the law.
Can I just very briefly add to that? Maybe there are two levels of analysis. One is, many people, especially the officials, are beginning to speak the same voice of Beijing, and also to play influence. Now, this has to do with power relationship. Now, of course, for the students, they don't care about power that much, but in fact, in reality, political power is of great importance, especially in China. So that's why, China wants to exert its authority over Hong Kong in all aspects, as I indicate in the white paper. And then in the way that Xi Jinping meets with the SAR government officials. What did they do in the past? We were talking like this. Xi Jinping is on that side, and then the SAR governor is over here. But now what happened? The Xi Jinping will be standing over there, he was sitting over there, and then we have to line up in 2 rows. Okay, this is to indicate that he is superior, and we are subordinates to his authority. And that's why you have the Hong Kong government officials on one side, and also the corresponding, Beijing officials on the other side. This should show that you are lesser than me. And this happens. And then what happens to the officials in Hong Kong? Of course, they know that the appointment has to be rectified by Beijing. That is the source of power. And then if the source of power is from the local people, then if the people give out hope on you, then you are no longer the SAR governor, right? The chief executive. Because you can't rule any place without public support in any way. And now what happens to Hong Kong? That's why Hong Kong has to resort to social movements in the past to exert their voice, to struggle for the rights. That is why Hong Kong has become more like a social movement society, 运动社会. And that's why we have hundreds of social protests every year. And Hong Kong has become a city of protest. 抗议城市, and now why that is the case? Because there is a need, to deal with the sophistication of the society. There are diverging demands, and how do we deal with it? Well, without a democratic system, you have to resort to social movements, right? But unfortunately, since the umbrella movement, the social movement in Hong Kong has been in decline. The people become very apathetic. That it has to do with the cycle of social movements. But in the past, people rely on the media and also rely on social movement in order to speak out. And there should be an interaction between the government officials and the people. If the people give it up, no more organization, no more social movements. I don't see, why the government officials would listen to the local people.
We're almost out of time. We'll just take one more question. This gentleman in the white had his hand up earlier, so this will be the last question, and then perhaps we can stick around a little bit after and maybe students can come and talk to you after. So the last question. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing in the very beginning. So I remember that gentleman has mentioned the issue of Daigongbao and the different papers, and I'd like to raise a different opinion of Professor Luqiu Luwei. Like I summarized your idea or paraphrased, say readers will be able to choose the best media through different opinions and symmetry of information for various media. I hope I fairly conclude your idea, but I have a different idea, different opinion to this. Let the market decide philosophy, because I think it is based on the concept of rationality. What do I mean is, it supposes that every individual of the public have the rationality to decide or to identify what is wrong or what is right, to know, to be critical. But in reality, I think the majority, at least from my house, they refuse to hear or understand different opinions, let alone opposite ideas. But when we allow such situation of extreme stance or dualism, I think this will distort the purpose of core value of freedom of expression. There's two sides of the media. With regards to the attitude of the media themselves, I have a personal experience. I'm the student ambassador of HKUST, and the students had led for the campus tour from Guangzhou. They told me a story that the student union of CUHK has posted on Facebook about the tourist group that entering the CUHK, which disturbed their lives significantly. And then right after that post, the Hong Kong 01 or other media, they interviewed the group that I led on that day and asked what they do in the school, and they regard them as the unofficial tourist group, but they are official. So I write 2 emails to CUHKSU to see whether they can change the fact that to justify the students from unofficial to official. But I have not heard from them. It should be more than 1 month now. And so I raise this case because I think emphasizing freedom of the press they're emphasizing the freedom of the press for the sake of their own rights rather than for the sake of seeking the truth. And also, with regards to the attitude of the public extreme opinions, I'd like to raise the case of Wandering Earth. There is a fierce debate on the rating of the Wandering Earth, the debate of 1-star and 5-star rating. And from this case, I doubt, can the public really decide what is right or wrong? And maybe the reason why they stand against the censorship is because their own interests are harmed, and hence they will clap and shout out and say yes for the foresight of the opinion of people that are not in their favor. So therefore, I personally think every citizen has the obligation to doubt such behaviors, like raising extreme opinion and ignoring the rest of the facts, rather than accepting them and let the reader decide. And my 2 questions will be, first, what can the journalists do to let themselves influence and inspire the public to have more passion for the freedom of the press, which is for a more just society? And how can the journalists to let themselves influence and inspire the public rather than be determined by the public concerning? And I also like to mention a question from the ladies again. What do you suggest to proactively encourage people out of indifference rather than passively wait for them to realize the importance of a value of the citizenship? Thank you.
Okay, quite a lot of questions there. Would anyone like to respond to any of those points?
For your 2 questions, I don't think it's the responsibility for the journalists to advocating the public. I think the journalists, if they want to show the importance of the freedom of press, they just do their job based on journalism and professionalism. So neutral, accuracy, so everything on the textbook, right? So nowadays the problem is a lot of journalists, they don't have the space or they don't have the kind of environment for them to do their job. It's just because of the different impact on their news outlets, so which impact journalists' performance. So why in a society, different factors should take their responsibility. Journalists should take that part of the responsibility, and if they do their job, that's enough. So I would not read that into that higher level, because when I was young, I just think, oh, I want to be a journalist. I want to be I want to take more. I want to change the world or something like that. But then I realized that for a journalist, a good journalist, it's to do your job and to report accurately and do not make mistakes. But yeah, sometimes the choice of the agenda choose by the journalists do reflect some values. So this is due. The journalists do have some social responsibilities compared with other occupations, but I would not by using advocating. because I think this is a different issue. Advocacy journalism, it's part of the journalism, but it's not my understanding of the professionalism of a journalist. So, yeah.
Maybe very briefly, I think one of your questions relate to the accountability of media, because in your case, you talked to the CUHK student union and they did not respond, right? Yeah, the question is who should be held accountable for false reports, okay, of any kind? Now, in a free press system, the media should be accountable too, other than not just the government. The government should be held accountable, but also the media themselves should be held accountable. Then how can they account for themselves? For one, there are different ways of doing it. In some media, they have a ombudsman, okay, meaning that they receive a complaint and they will check it out and then post an apology if necessary. That is kind of thing. The other thing is, if we have more than one media to diversify voices, then usually one media can check out against the other. Okay, like the 500,000 rally. People taking to the street in 2003, 500,000, okay? Now, some media later on did not report much about that demonstration. They say, 200,000 or 10,000. Now, there's an under-reporting all the time, The question is, you have to check out different reports and see, which is more trustworthy. That's why the credibility of the media also is important. Okay? If the people do not trust you, your newspaper won't sell. And also another check would be, ultimately you can sue them, take them to court. If you find that is important, that's how it is dealt with in a free press system. It may not be foolproof, but these are some of the ways of dealing with the issue.
Just two very brief quick points. First, I feel sorry that perhaps the failure of CUHK students to respond to your complaint. I hope that won't affect the way you see the importance of media. Whether the way media or newspapers, news media handle or mishandle something is a question of professionalism. It's not a question of the fundamentals. That is like the importance of independence media and their role in society. Second point, I think we ought to have faith in people, their wisdom to make decisions, choices, and we, the media include, should do everything we can to help them make the best decisions. We should publish all sorts of ratings of a movie. I don't see a problem if a movie has got very bad rating, very high rating. This is to me this is healthy science. This is what really diversity is about. That we let people to express their views, however extreme, I put it in quote, that may be, however politically motivated that may be, but let people see everything. Let's see people everything. To me, that would be better than a place that could only give 5 stars to a movie. You are not allowed to give a 1-star rating to it. That's not. I don't think that's the kind of society that we want. That we ought to give a high rating to certain thing because of you know what.
Okay, Tina, would you like to say
Okay, thank you, Professor Luqiu, Professor Chen. May I Professor Yuan and Professor Groff, and this is really an inspiring and fascinating discussion. And also thank you all our audience, because like you raised really many valuable questions. But we are actually reaching the end of tonight's forum, and if you have more questions, and I think you are welcome to come to and talk to our guest after the end. So. But now I hope that you could take a few minutes or so to help us to fill a feedback form, evaluating the work we've done for this forum and help us make progress. And please scan the QR code here on the screen. So it would take you like 1 or 2 minutes to finish a little survey. And actually, the self-censorship. And after I come to Hong Kong, I think I just do want to do something. Like to something like raise the awareness, and I'm really glad to see that there's so many it's actually unexpected number of participants at our forum tonight, and I do hope that we've done a satisfying job to build this platform for everyone to discuss about something and to get to know about something. I think that will be meet our expectation of something. Yeah, and so that's why I want to introduce our society, Greater China Vision, because now we're doing things that we built these kind of platform to discuss about some social issues. So you're really welcome to subscribe our social medias and subscribe our emails. Afterwards we'll show you you're welcome to scan the QR codes here to subscribe our social media, and you can receive more information about our coming events. And I hope that you can join more events to discuss, and we can talk about the topics like this. And so thank you very much for your participation tonight. And after you finish the feedback form, you can leave. So thank our speakers tonight, as this is really a great time to have all of you here to share your feedback. Thank you very much.